Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video we're going to continue to work on the Konick race car, and more specifically we're going to wrap up and finish up the front part of the car. That means the suspension, that means the brakes, and that means the steering. In previous videos we have actually inspected the brake system, we rebuilt the brake calipers, we checked the bearings, we checked the discs, we also checked the shocks and the springs. And all of that is kind of now reconditioned, and I'll show you that in a few minutes before it's going to go back on. The master brake cylinders, well, they were gone, so those will be replaced as well. We still have to work a little bit on the steering house, but that is coming in this video. So looking at the front of the car, you can see that we still have a lot of parts that we have to remove first, clean them up and powder coat them, and I'll give you a little bit of a detail in a few seconds. When I disassemble parts, I like to use buckets like this, and I mark the parts because I have no reference on this car. I have no schematics or technical manuals, so I like to label things to make sure that everything goes back in the same place. And if you do this kind of work, take pictures if you're not sure how things are fit together, because you can't remember that most of the time. If you let it sit there for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have forgotten, most likely, on how things were put together or which bolt was going where. So that's always a good help. So let's take a closer look on what we're going to do first. So the first part we're going to remove is the upright, and for that I need to disconnect the steering house and 2 ball joints, one on the top and one on the bottom. Alright, this is going very smoothly. I'm going to lift it up a bit. Here we go, that's number 1. I guess I'm going to leave the bolt in so I don't lose it. So now we're disconnecting the rod, which is going to the steering house. So here we have our upright, and I will just unbolt or undo this counter nut. This is for the adjustment. And I should be able to get it out like this. I will undo this bolt later on in the vise because I couldn't hold it. This still feels quite alright. Alright, so that's part number 1. So let's remove the brake line. A little bit of degrip always helps. So this will release the lower wishbone. I still have one more bolt on the other side. So I'm going to leave that here for now because I'm going to undo the other side first. This shouldn't be too hard to get this loose. Most of them are quite easy to remove. So now the lower wishbone can come off. There it is. And now it's time for the upper wishbone, and this was the one that was having a bit of play, but I guess this one we can fix easily with a couple of washers. Alright, so let's see what we got here. So it looks like these brass or bronze washers had the best time, so I might need to put a new one up. Next we're going to remove the front master brake cylinder. The one for the back was already removed before. So let's see if we can get to this guy. Alright, now it's time to remove the master clutch cylinder. Let me just disconnect the flex. This is hard. Now this pump is still working, so that is good, but I might put a new one up after we checked it out. This is still going to leak some, so let me get a bucket because there's still some fluid coming out of it, so I'm going to catch it in a bucket. It's not that much, but it is a bit. Maybe if I push the pedal, oh, I get more out of it. Doesn't seem nothing wrong with this clutch system, but the cover is a bit tacky, isn't it? So I will have to have new copper seals for all these banyo connections, and that is always good to do. So this guy is almost coming off now. It's still stuck now on the pedal. I should have known that. So I disconnected the pedal, and now I should be able to get it out. Here we go. Now I'm trying to remove the torsion bar inside. And here it is. So, right. I just want to make sure that I keep the right things in the right spot. I removed almost all the parts, except of course the steering house. So that's only 4 bolts, and I already have disconnected the steering column, and then we'll also remove the steering column itself and the steering wheel. And then it's time for the big cleanup and the big inspection, and once all that is done, we'll put it back together. So let's see if we can get this undone. It's a lot of fiddling, and to be honest, I need to put my glasses on, because without it, I see diddly squat. All right, so luckily most of the bolts are not really hard fitted, so I'm quite happy about that, because if you have bolts that break off, then it takes a long time to get things disassembled. Well, that's interesting. This one is actually loose, which is kind of scary on a steering house that you find loose bolts. And even that one is fairly loose, but I need to hold it in the back. All right. So I'm going to hold it up with a tie wrap so it doesn't drop down. And of course, if you work with 2 people, one can hold it, but I work alone, so. All right. That should do it. So let's cut the tie wrap, and then we can remove the steering wheel. A lot of the parts have numbers on them, and they are matched, so pay attention to that. So if you have numbers on it, it's easy, but if you have no numbers on it, then just engrave something on it. So the next thing is to take the steering column out, and the first thing I'm going to try to do is to remove the steering wheel, which is this nut right here. So that should be okay. These wires are no longer used, so I don't need those anymore. So let's see if we can get this loose. Spray a bit of D-grip on it. Let's see if there's a cut on the other side as well. There is one in that slit, and I'm just going to spray that as well. All right. All right. I'm going to turn it the other way around so it's easier for me to work. There's not much to be seen on this anyway when somebody is unbolting something. Okay, so we got a ring there, so I grabbed the ring. I should be able to turn that off. And that seems to work just fine. But now I'm at the end. So let's see. I probably need to move this now a bit forward. I'm not sure. This is really difficult, this part. Unless I would loosen up a bit the console, and then I might be able to get it out and then separate it. I had to remove the dashboard to get a bit of a better sight on how this was installed, the steering column. So now I should be able to get it off. Okay. I have no need for this middle part here, so I will just cut it for the moment and then we'll see what we do with it. So the steering column is almost out. A couple more bolts and we are done. Let's see if we can get it out. So now that we have stripped the complete front part, we can take a closer look on the actual frame where all the welds are and see if we have any metal fatigue. But overall, this is looking real good. There's no corrosion whatsoever. There's a bit chipping of the paint here and there. I'm just going to retouch that. The front part, actually, I might have to repaint that partially because that's where we had some leaks of the brake fluid and it has eaten away the paint a little bit. But that's about it. For the rest, this frame is very much intact. Here you see traces of the braking fluid that has eaten up the paint, but it's not really rusted. It's just very much on the surface, so a little bit of sanding will take care of that, and then I'm going to repaint this whole front part here, and that will take care of it. Finally, I got all the parts removed from the front, so the wishbones, the steering house, the steering column, the master brake cylinders, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So now this is back to its bare chassis almost. I still have some brake lines running here to the back and to the clutch, but they can stay for now. And now I can do a proper inspection. I have all my parts spread on the table. Some parts we already have rebuilt, like the brake calipers, and you can see the shiny parts. That's those parts right here. Some stuff has already been powder coated, and you might have seen that previous video. Other stuff will have to be replaced completely, but these are the old master brake cylinders. I got new ones for that. They are sitting on the side here in new boxes. We've got new brake discs. We got a lot of new stuff. We even got new bearings to put up to the car, and these are the bearings that we had initially. The right-hand side was okay, but the left-hand side had a bit of play, so we're going to put new bearings up. You can see my buckets. I have one bucket here from all the parts from the wishbones on the left-hand side. My other bucket is on the other side. Probably it's not in the picture right now. So now it's quite a job to start cleaning all this up and inspect it and get it powder coated and whatever I need to do with it to make it look proper again. And when everything is clean, I will reassemble everything. I still have a few parts that are being degreased for the moment, like the brake balance. That's something we'll have to weld up. So I'm going to start cleaning, and I'm going to take a few shots while I'm cleaning, but not everything in detail because it gets a bit boring, doesn't it, to see me cleaning up stuff. So I'm going to start with blasting the wishbones with Garnet 360, so the paint is off, and then I most likely will blast them again with some glass beads so they become nice and smooth, and then I can actually powder coat those. I think that's the most important part, so they are ready tomorrow. Most of the other parts is actually cleaning it up and painting it a little bit. The steering wheel is kind of an interesting one. I think I'm going to keep this, and I'm quite sure I can actually take care of the aluminum part here. Even if I blast it with glass beads, I think this will come out nice. Yeah, this is a nice little steering wheel, so I don't see any reasons why I would get rid of this. You know, the paint is gone, or the black stuff is gone a bit, but yeah, that's just vintage, I will call it. All right. Okay, so let me start now blasting. Meanwhile, I've been coating the upright, and now this is ready to be powder coated. I also have shot blasted the parts that are used for the shock absorbers, and this is alloy, so this is going to stay like this. And now is the time to check the welds to see if there's any fatigue or any cracks, and all that looks good. The whisk bones are still in a pretty good condition. In fact, all the welds are looking quite good. There are a lot of parts on the table now, and one by one they're all getting cleaned, and once they're all done, then they go back onto the car. The brake calipers were shot blasted with glass bead, and it creates a nice shine on that, not too much. And it's been like this now like 3 weeks already, so I don't think that's going to change. We got the new pistons inside and the new seals. I already have done part of the brake calipers with powder coating. The pedals were cleaned as well, and I don't want to have a shine on that, that's not necessary, and they still look to be quite alright, so we can fit those right back. This is the brake bias part, and that still needs to be soldered on there on the end because that's been broken off. And even the knob turned out quite nice with lots of fine detail, and really shot blasting with glass beads really works well. So this is the attachment for the steering wheel, and that is looking alright. I kind of shot blasted it. I think this part is metal, so this will be painted. But the upper part is all aluminum or some kind of an alloy, so hopefully I can keep it like this. The master clutch cylinder has been cleaned out on the outside, not at the inside yet. I still have to see how that is, but since I was blasting, I did the outside as well. We'll find out how it is at the inside. And you might remember the tacky looking dashboard. Well, this has now been shot blasted as well, so I think this is all right. We still have to put a couple of dials in, certainly a temperature dial, and a couple of new switches, but we still have time to do that. And this is part of the steering column, the U-joint, and that turned out to be really nice. So this is going to be painted in clear. And of course the steering wheel, so that has been shot blasted, and I put some black leather paint onto the steering wheel, so now that looks a little bit better. Well, the uprights should have been cooking now long enough and having cooled down by now, so let's have a look how it looks like. And I think it's not too hot anymore. It looks quite all right. Well, I think the uprights turned out to be quite nice, and I have both of them done. So now it's time to inspect the ball joint. So the ball joints are still all right, and these are the ones that will be fitted to the uprights. And it's actually a half dome steel ball, which rotates in a brass or bronze enclosure. And this one still feels okay. It doesn't have too much splay, and it's important that it doesn't have. If it does, then I would have to replace it. But I'm going to put some grease at the inside because I like things to be greased, and for that I'm going to use white lithium grease. Some people say you don't have to, and some people say there's more harm than good. I have no bad experiences with that, so that's what I'm going to do. All right. I'm going to install the lower ball joint, and therefore I'm just going to give it a little bit of loop inside because I hate things that are rusted. I'm just going to put it in as far as I can, but it's not going to be at the right and the correct place because that's something I will need to do once the car is fully assembled and when we do all the alignments. So I'm going to leave this fairly loose for now to assemble things, and once that is done, we'll adjust it. So the two uprights are now ready, so I'm going to place them aside because now we need to work on the wishbones. So this is the shot blasted lower wishbone, and before we go into powder coat it, I will have to degrease it completely, but I also need to take off the ball joints because you don't want those in the oven, nor do you want those to be powder coated. So that's now the first thing we need to do. Now, while I'm disconnecting them, I'm going to keep them in the right place where they're supposed to be, so I know exactly where they go. So no need to replace these. So I'm just going to degrease it with acetone because you want to have a clean surface before you do powder coating. And if you want to know how I do my powder coating, then I have a video on that. Now you might have noticed that I've been placing bolts in different areas, and that's just because I don't want the powder to get inside the frame. The lower wishbone is now ready to get in the oven to be gassed. And what I mean with gassed is that you want to put it in the oven to remove all the humidity out of the material or the gases. It's around 180 degrees as well, and I leave it in for half an hour, and then it's ready to be powder coated. And then that should be done, and then we'll do the next one. So I'm going to do all these wishbones now, and I'm not going to show you all of them, I will show you one. If you want to know how to powder coat, then I would say look at my video on how I do powder coating. But okay, let me carry on. While the wishbone is curing in the oven, I'm going to see what I need to do with the dashboard. So, because I want to put up an extra dial on temperature, because I don't have a temperature dial, and I know there's an indication on the dial here, but I like to have a proper meter for that. And I already have put up a new starter button, and I think I will probably place on top of that my ignition switch, which could go right here. But I have to make sure that the steering wheel is not going to be in the way and that it's reachable, and that seems to be the case. I think the steering wheel is about here. So now I need to make a 52 millimeter hole right here for my temperature gauge, but that one I might actually make it on an offset so I have like a better view, because otherwise it's gonna lean out to the outside, unless I would be able to place it here. So let's see if that would fit. That might actually do it. So I might fit a temperature meter right here, and then here I could fit the brake bias adjustment. Now, to be 100% sure, I think I better put up the real steering wheel and the steering rod. I think that's about it. Anyway, all this is very temporarily, so just that I can see how everything fits, because I want to put up some extra switches, some extra stuff, so that is important. So here we go. So the temperature switch, I could place it on the side here, but if I do so, that's going to be like facing away, so I would have to make something, a bracket or something that points like this. But if I was able to place it right here, then that would be perfect, wouldn't it? I can see it through the steering wheel, and it's not in the way for anything, not even in the back. I have an open space, and I can see it through the steering wheel. Now, that would be good, I think. And I think over here I could easily install the brake bias knob. I think that will fit just perfectly. Let's see. I don't know, it's all still a loose installation, but I need to make sure that I can put things in the right spot. Now that looks okay. And I think this will be perfect. I don't need to drill a bigger hole. The hole is already there, so that's good. So let me mark this, and then we'll drill the hole right there. And I think this looks good. So that hole should be perfect for a 52 mil gauge. So now I'm going to take the panel off, and we're going to powder coat it in black, because I think it's going to look better in glossy black. And the brake bias cable, well, that one was already bad. We noticed that in the first episode, so now we're going to try to get that back on there. That might be a little bit of an issue, but let's see if this is going to work or not. I have it already completely degreased, so I'm going to try to get it out. let's see if we can get this guy actually soldered in. And also the wishbones came back quite nicely out of the oven, so those are ready now also to be assembled, but I still have a couple of other things to do. The dashboard is now power coated in shiny black, and I mounted temporarily the brake bias button, but also the starter and the mains switch for ignition. The instrument cluster is on the top, and I have a hole right here, as you have seen, where we're going to install a temperature gauge, which I don't have yet. So I think overall this black dashboard looks quite alright. Maybe some people like better the aluminum version, but I think black looks good. Alright, I was initially planning to have one video where I was putting everything back together, but as you can see, there's a lot of work still to be done. So the rest of the assembly will be for the next video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.